Netflix's new documentary series, Our Planet, takes viewers around the globe to see some of nature's greatest wonders. I'm Zach Laws, contributing editor at Gold Derby, and joining me now is Stephen Price. He's the Oscar-winning composer of the film Gravity, and he's here to talk about his work today on Our Planet. Stephen, take us back to the beginning and tell us a little bit about why you wanted to become involved in this.
I first heard about the project towards the end of a previous series that I'd done for these producers. We worked on a show for the BBC called The Hunt back in 2015. And just towards the end of that project, I kind of was told a couple of times that something big's coming up. And, that's always interesting. And then I got a call to visit about 2 years ago to where they're based in Bristol. And they told me about the scale of the project, basically, and the fact that this is the first time Netflix have done a show like this. 8 films, huge scale, but with a real approach of dealing with conservation for the first time. And they showed me bits of the footage, and they told me what was happening in various parts of the world where they'd been filming. And it was one of those projects that you absolutely wanted to be involved in. And it was kind of an honor to be asked to be involved in as well. It's definitely, it feels like the most important project I've ever been asked to do. And I think for everyone on the show, it's been a real kind of labor of love.
Well, I just want to drill down on that a bit. Why was it such a passionate thing for you to do? I mean, are you a big conservationist activist, or?
I think as with a lot of people, I've always kind of, read all the news reports coming out saying what's going on and all that sort of stuff, but never really kind of taken it any further than that. I just sort of, we obviously all care, but it's got to the point where we all have to act.
Right.
And so the great thing about the show is that it's kind of, in a very simple way, it's very entertaining, but it's also kind of showing the damage that's being done. And there's also a layer of optimism to that, in that there are things we can all do. So to be part of something like that, which hopefully will start a conversation, which the likes of myself needed to start, it feels like the right time for a show like that, and a crucial time for a show like that.
Absolutely. You mentioned the scale of this, and as I said at the outset, you worked on Gravity, so composing for massive projects isn't something that you're unfamiliar with. Can you just talk a bit about what you wanted your music to achieve? How you wanted it to complement or contrast with the images?
Yeah, I mean, the crucial thing for every sequence in the entire show, and we've got sort of 8 films of around sort of 50 minutes to an hour length, is really to follow the emotion of it. Each of the shows take you to a different biome. So a different, we've got the frozen world, we've got coastal seas, high seas, all these places. And we show you kind of how they interconnect. And the ambition for me was within each sequence, for it to feel like the sequence really got to the emotion of the scene. But within the show, for it to feel like the music was kind of really belonging to that environment. And then on the broader scale, that it all felt like it was part of this Our Planet concept. And so I was very keen to keep the music very thematic. There's a lot of recurring melodies that appear throughout the show, but within that, each show had to feel very particular. So it was kind of this huge jigsaw puzzle, really. And I ended up writing about 6.25 hours of music for the show last year. So it was kind of a huge old challenge in that respect, but incredibly satisfying. I mean, the footage is amazing, and the stories are really beautifully told.
And what did you do in order to create that sense of scale? How do you do that through music?
Well, with this, I mean, the original idea was that we wanted it to be an orchestral score, and we wanted to really draw the emotion out. So the orchestra and the musicians and lots of live performance was always going to be really crucial to that. For me, a lot of the way into the show was the environment. So, for example, there's a forest show there. And when I started working on the sounds for that, the colors seemed to need sort of a lot of woodwind and a lot of kind of very small percussion, and leaving a lot of space for the incredible sounds of nature around it. Whereas something like the Frozen show, great big vistas of white and these incredible views, you found yourself using voice and lots of sort of more glacial sort of tones and a bit more synthesizer and all that sort of stuff. The orchestra always pulled it together. And emotionally, the playing was fantastic. And we've got a lot of very lovely solos, and I'm so blessed that the players sort of gave us their best every time. So yeah, it's a very sort of melodic kind of score, and I think hopefully an emotional score. But yeah, within that, it's very varied throughout the course of the series.
Well, could you point out a couple more examples? I mean, you mentioned this a little bit just now, but I mean, a few more examples of how episode by episode, each one had its own kind of unique little sound. And I mean, how long did it take you to kind of come up with all of uh, all of those different unique sounds for these?
Well, really, but in terms of the time, it was a really kind of intense sort of 9, 10 month period. And that once we got up and running, I started off by doing a lot of thematic work just with very rough images and that kind of stuff. Lots of sitting around with a piano or a guitar and just trying to find some melodies that seemed to have the sort of scope I was looking for. And then the actual time that I was getting picture to actually work on, it was a real sort of intense period. We were kind of doing a one film a month. So it's kind of like a 45, 50-minute film score every month. So it was kind of intense with all that. And, but I would kind of have locked picture on this, they don't change the picture on you. So you can really commit to what you're doing and really make sure you're getting everything to the frame. And, we got into this sort of role where I'd constantly be writing, and each episode would take between 3 or 4 weeks to write. Whilst that was going on, orchestration started, the mixing of the previous episodes gone. So it really became this kind of intense machine over the course of it. And finding the sounds was, a lot of it was instinctive, and that you kind of just, the images and the colors are so different for all these places. I did a desert and grasslands episode, and then the one after that I did freshwater episode. So all of a sudden the movement of the water and the whole theory of the way the rivers flow and the importance of that kind of guided what you wrote. You found yourself writing very florid stuff for that, whereas in something like the jungle episode, where you were dealing with lots of very small animals and lots of intimate behavior, you wrote with sort of different palette. So I just try to bond it as much as possible to what I was seeing in the stories that they were telling.
Do you have a particular favorite episode that you think shows off your music to the best of its abilities, or I mean, the way that it works with picture? Do you have a particular favorite?
I'm kind of really proud. It sounds daft, but I am really proud of all of it. It was. The great thing about this is that all the shows had been being made by 4 or 5 years by the most dedicated crews, and also that everyone had incredible material. There isn't an episode where you went, here's the weak one halfway through. They're all really strong. But the things that I find myself enjoying writing for tend to be the episodes that had both the incredible sweeping scale, which you get a lot with the Ocean show, for example, or the Frozen World show, but also can kind of bring you down to really intimate moments. I've got a moment in the High Seas film where the show starts with this incredible display of so many animals in a space, and the constant escalation of one animal chasing another animal, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then in the very next show, you're dealing with a tiny baby penguin being born and a little family scene and their little hardships. And those were the bits for me where you got to go from the real scale of things, but also into real intimate moments. A particular favorite is in the opening episode. There's a incredible sequence in Greenland where you have a huge, great sort of ice melting into the sea. So a glacier that's miles long. And that was one of those things where you had this huge, great, noisy sort of real life thing happening that really shouldn't be happening. And it's happening too often, and things are melting that shouldn't be melting. Huge, great thing. But then we managed to sort of find a way to take away all of that natural noise and come down to the smallest little piano and violin sort of melody, sort of lament almost. And it was moments like that when you felt that kind of you were looking at a scene in a way that was all about the emotion of it, and hopefully sort of really pulling the audience into that. Those were the things I really loved doing.
I mentioned your Oscar win at the offset. Talk a little bit about what that meant to you and about that night, because I mean, it was uh, such a huge evening for Gravity overall. 7 Oscar wins, including for directing, by Mr. Alfonso Cuarón, who's been in the Oscar race again recently. Talk a bit about that.
Oh, it was just the most incredible experience, really. I mean, it was such an intense project. We all kind of we're all pushing to do something different with that project, and with that comes an awful lot of long hours, long months, So it was, by the time we got the film released, we were all kind of very close. All the sort of people who ended up going through that experience with me. So when I look back at that now, it was kind of a little family we had. You got to know the sound people very well. You got to know the visual effects people very well. Everyone kind of got very, very close. And of course, we were all traveling from England to America to do the various events around the Oscars. it was just a lot of fun. I mean, incredibly surreal in lots of ways. You never imagined, well, I certainly never imagined that you'd find yourself there. And so there were lots of moments when you almost didn't dare look up, because it just felt so crazy. But for me, it was just a wonderful experience. I'm incredibly grateful to it. It was quite early on in my career, which is a wonderful thing. It's kind of tricky in some ways because you feel from that point onwards, the rest of your life will be spent proving that, which is, that's okay too. But I'm enormously grateful to it, and it meant I got to keep doing this for a living in lots of ways. So yeah, I'll always be grateful to the whole experience, and the awards were just kind of this beautiful icing on the cake, really. The experience of doing the film and the work itself was, the thing.
Well, what did you learn? I mean, because like you said, that was earlier in your career. I think that was like your third movie, or something like that. So, what did you learn doing a movie like that that you were able to carry on to your future projects and helped you with something like this?
I think it's that brilliant blessing of working with someone who is as brilliant as Alfonso, and it's that process that you always keep trying until someone physically pulls you away from the dubbing theater or whatever it is. There might be something better, and it's that feeling that that'll do isn't something that someone like Alfonso will ever do. So now I always have that on my shoulder. There's always that kind of, even if you think this is okay, the cue that you're working on, this is working, and the director might be liking it, doesn't mean to say there's not that little extra few percent. And what was fascinating seeing him work was how if you push everybody to that level, everyone's doing a little extra, everyone's finding an extra percent. The combination of that is suddenly something that not one of us individually would have come up with. It's this brilliant collaborative thing. So that's the thing that I try and take with me, that the fact that there's always a chance there's something better. There's always a chance that you can kind of top the thing you've done, and if there's time, why wouldn't you try? So that's a nice lesson to have been given.
One more question before I let you go. This series is, of course, narrated by the great David Attenborough, whose voice has been on so many of these documentary series. Having your music go along with Mr. Attenborough's voice, were you ever afraid of maybe his vocals overshadowing yours?
Oh, I'm always very careful to use Sir David's voice. He's like the lead instrument. So if he's playing, I'm letting him focus. But what's fascinating about David is sometimes when the schedules are kind of, sometimes he does his bit first, sometimes I've done my bit first. And there have been occasions where, I've even if it's just my demos that exist at this stage, we haven't recorded it with the orchestra yet. He will have those playing while he's doing his narration, and he has the most amazing kind of musical ear, and he completely plays along. He is emotionally following the lines of the music. He places his dialogue in the places where musically it's the most appropriate. So he just makes the music sound better. He's he just, everything about these shows, he lifts. So yeah, it's the first time I heard his voice on some my stuff was one of those kind of shivers down the spine, because I've grown up with these shows. Some of my earliest memories were watching these things on TV in England when I was very, very small. So just hearing that voice talking over something you've done is like a real treat.
Absolutely. Well, Stephen Price, thank you so much, and congratulations on your work. Good luck at the Emmys this year. And thanks to all of you at home for watching this video. Make sure you click the like and subscribe button, and make sure you come visit us at Gold Derby, where we pull all the experts and users just like yourselves to try to predict the Emmys, the Oscars, the Grammys, the Tonys, and every other award show under the planet. Thank you so much.